Hello everybody and welcome back to Screen Stars. I'm here today to review the 2013 vampire found footage film Afflicted, a film that I knew nothing about really up until a couple of days ago, and while I was researching, and yes, I quite realise this is becoming a bit of an obsession now. It's becoming a real project for me in regards to watching found footage movies and getting to do a list of my favourite ones. I was watching somebody's list on YouTube of their favourite found footage movies, and this was on the list, and I recognised the poster because while I've been looking through horror movies over the last few months or however long it's been, I've noticed the poster before now, and I've always skipped by it because at first glance it looks like it's one of those like disease type horror movies, body horror type things. I'm not really a fan of that type of horror, so I've always avoided it. But in actual fact, guys, this is a found footage movie that is vampire based, and it's a strange cross between Chronicle, if you remember that sci-fi superhero film that was really good, and Hardcore Henry, with vampires thrown into the mix. And it's actually really pretty bloody good, is this film. It really took me by surprise. I really enjoyed it. And this film is about two friends, Derek and Cliff, and I've just realised that's actually the names of the actors as well, Cliff Prowse and Derek Lee, and their characters' names is Cliff and Derek. And they are going on a round the world trip. They're taking a whole year out of their lives to go and travel around the world for a year and visit 30 countries. And Derek has some kind of brain condition, an aneurysm or something, that could rupture at any point and could either kill him or cripple him, whatever. So he wants to get as much out of life as he can before anything might happen. So they've got this whole trip planned out. His friend's a documentarian filmmaker, so he's going to film everything. He's got all the right gear, and they head off to Barcelona first, and then the second city they go to, Paris, Derek, on a night out, is attacked quite brutally by this woman who his friend Cliff thinks he's hooked up with, and she actually attacks him brutally, but Derek refuses to go to the hospital. He insists they carry on with the trip, and so they do. They carry on with the trip. They go to Italy next, but things just keep spiraling out of control. He can't eat. He's sleeping all the time. He's not happy in the daylight. All these strange things start happening to him, and they can't understand it at first, what's going on. His friend Cliff is really worried about him, wants him to go to the hospital. Then he starts displaying this superhuman strength and stuff and these abilities. So they decide to document it all. They decide to test his strength. They decide to test his speed and all this kind of stuff. And it's all fun at this point, bizarrely, I suppose. And then things start getting worse and worse. And as he is continuing to change into what he will ultimately become, it gets more sinister, it gets darker, it gets more scary, and eventually he decides, after a tragic event that's his fault, he decides to head back to Paris to find this woman that turned him, all in the while chased by Interpol. He's wanted by everybody at this point because he has done some questionable things, but he wants answers. So that's your movie, and he decides to film everything as well. They've got these like strap-on cameras that go on the chest, like GoPros on the chest, and it films everything. And that's where you get your Hardcore Henry stuff from, because at some points in this film, heavy action points in this film, it's all filmed like from the first-person perspective. That's your movie here, guys. Now, I really enjoyed this film. I thought it was fantastic. And my understanding is it was only made on a budget of something like $400,000 or something like that. $400,000, I mean. And what they've put on screen here is incredible for that kind of budget. The effects themselves defy belief. For a low budget film, some of the best effects I've ever seen. Some of the vampire effects that they put on screen are brilliant. Some of the stuff that his reaction to sunlight is all really, really high quality stuff. The two actors that they get as Derek and Cliff do a brilliant job the film does a really good job of fleshing out these two characters, so you really do care about them. It does a fantastic job of that. And then as the movie continues to escalate, and he does some very questionable things. It's almost like, if you've seen Dexter, the show Dexter, you've seen some of the things that Dexter does on that show. Appalling things, but you still can't help rooting for him. And Breaking Bad, Walter White, he does some awful things, but you can't help rooting for him. It's a bit like Derek in this film. He does some pretty awful things, but you can't help rooting for him to a certain degree. And at the end of the movie, there's a moral decision that has to take place, because he's given an ultimatum, and he has to make a moral decision, which is a really interesting end to the movie as well. So I've got to say, guys, this is one of the best found footage films I've seen in recent times, even though it's from 2013. It's new to me. Really high quality, how they've done some of this stuff for the money that they had. Really high quality. There are horror elements in this, I would suggest. It's not scary or terrifying. There are some scares in it. There are some jumps, if you like, but nothing too brutal, and there's nothing too gory. There are some scenes of gore here and there, but nothing. There's nothing shocking on screen, I would say. They haven't gone for shock value here, but a really well made, well written, well crafted, original vampire movie that I'm really delighted that I have seen now, because vampire films are some of my most favourite films if they're done really well, and this has been done really well. I've never seen a vampire found footage film before, not like this, and I've got to say, guys, I thoroughly enjoyed this. And if you've never seen Afflicted and you like a good vampire flick, something a little bit different, I can't see how you wouldn't enjoy this, because it's really well made and really good. So it's an 8 out of 10 for me, guys. There are some minor issues that I have with the film. You know, the transition between his friend Cliff thinking he's just poorly his friend, or he's got food poisoning or something. The transition between you're poorly and you need to go to hospital to you're a vampire, let's have some fun and film this, is a little bit unbelievable. There's a couple of other things as well. He finds his phone that gives him a clue as to how he can find somebody that's been hidden in Lost and Found for a couple of weeks, but the battery still works and he's no way to power it up. So there are a couple of issues here and there, a couple of plot holes here and there, but you can forgive it all. Ultimately, this is a blast and I really enjoyed it, guys. So if you've never seen it, I do recommend it.